Hey everyone, I'm bringing you more dark web stories. Now, these first 3 stories are subscriber stories. However, all of the stories you'll hear tonight are all true. I'd also like to say thank you very much for helping me reach over 2,000 subscribers. I appreciate each and every one of you so much. Thank you. And with that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. I shouldn't have clicked it. I don't know what I was even thinking. Part of it was desperation. I had just lost my job and money was tight. But I could draw unemployment, but it hardly covered my bills. And any cent I earned picking up temp work threatened to erase my benefits entirely. I was unemployed longer than I'd anticipated. And like an idiot, I lived on credit cards and watched helplessly as the debts mounted up, and getting out seemed more impossible. That was the desperation that drove me to the dark web. A need for income that was untraceable, under the table, and even to settle my considerable debt. But as I said, only part of my motive was desperation. The other part is harder to explain. I guess you'd call it morbid curiosity, a certain fascination. I had heard stories about the dark web and I wanted to see it for myself. I wanted to see if it was really as strange and frightening as the stories make it seem. Here's what you really need to realize about the dark web. It's not easy to find what you're looking for. Things aren't at your fingertips. At first, there hardly seems to be anything at all. When I first logged in, I honestly thought it was a joke. I couldn't find anything that was not easily seen in 2 seconds of Googling. But eventually, you'll stumble across a site that leads to something a little deeper, and you follow those links further and further down the rabbit hole. And that's when you start to find the really weird stuff. The dark web has layers to it. In the surface, the easiest to find, you've got your run-of-the-mill illegal stuff. Drugs, prostitutes, money laundering. Lots of people trading Bitcoin and more questionable currency for equal questionable services. Hitmen, terrorist groups, fetishes, dealing in the most twisted acts you can imagine. Lots of inappropriate images of kids and bestiality. Really sick stuff. One website advertised snuff films, but I didn't want to click it. I wasn't here to fulfill some sick urge, or satisfy some twisted curiosity. I just wanted to find a way to earn a little money. I was careful not to click anything that seemed sketchy, so mostly I just saw link titles. But then something caught my eye. Something I couldn't just scroll past. It was a photograph. It was posted on this forum I'd found. This place was like an underground dark web version of Fiverr. You posted what you were willing to do, and at what price. All kinds of things. A lot of them were sexual in nature. Hitmen for hire, drivers and transporters for all kinds of illegal jobs, hackers, virus coders, and then, inexplicably, the photo. It was posted without any explanation, no comment, and no title. Just a single photograph with a link to a site whose URL has been scrambled. My mouse hovered over it for a second. The photo showed a young girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, sitting on an old wooden swing. She's missing a front tooth, which you can clearly see because she's smiling broadly. The yellow dress she's wearing has mud on the hem, like she's been playing outside, and her hair is a mess of golden curls and tangles. The girl is me. I recognize the dress, the hair, even the swing. It's the yard at my grandparents' house. It's me as a little girl. So what the heck is this photo doing on the dark web? I clicked on it. Soon I was taken to a directory. Not really a website, just a list of files. Feeling an anxious knot in my stomach, I started to click it. A day out.jpg. Me as a 10-year-old riding my bike. My childhood dog running along beside. Big girls.jpg. Me at 5 years old, sitting on the curb holding a freshly skinned knee. My face is screwed up against tears. Like I'm trying not to cry. Outcold.jpg. Me at age 17, passed out asleep at a friend's house. I'm in a recliner and my head is tilted back, with my mouth hanging open. You can see the gap of flesh between my pajama pants and the hem of my t-shirt. That terrible knot in my stomach tightened. There were so many files, and every one seemed to be a picture of me. But I've never seen these pictures before. It's not like someone just pulled these from my mom's Facebook page or something. I've never seen any of these. And what's weirder, I don't remember doing any of these things. None of the moments captured in the photographs bring up any memories for me at all. DisneyMagic.jpg. A photo of me, age 8 or 9. Hugging someone in a Pluto costume. Mickey is off to the side, with big smiles. I have never been to Disneyland. OpticalIllusion.avi. This one's a video. It shows me, maybe 12 years old, doing a dance routine in what is definitely my mother's living room. I'm wearing a pink leotard, but there's no sound. But I'm obviously following a choreographed routine, something I'd practiced. I was never in a dance team. I don't remember this at all. I thought maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it's not me, just some other little girl who looks like me, who lived in places that looked like where I grew up. JustNow.jpg. A photo of me, and it's recent. I'm an adult wearing a t-shirt I still own, sitting on the edge of my bed, painting my toenails. It's me. It's definitely me. There's no question about it. But I don't remember doing that either. I don't paint my nails. I don't remember ever having painted them. While you were sleeping.avi. Another video. I'm in bed, sleeping on my side under my comforter. It's my current bedroom. I recognize the furniture, the location of the window. The angle seems to be filled from the foot of the bed, but from slightly above, looking down, there's a man in my bed with me. His body is wrapped around mine. One hand is plunged between my legs, and in the video, I can see it moving slowly, but rhythmically beneath the blankets. I've never seen that man before in my life. I shut down the browser in a panic. I turned off the computer and unplugged it. I ran to my room and started tearing it apart looking for a hidden camera. Nothing. No sign. I went out that night to the 24-hour Walmart and bought extra locks. I was up all night adding more locks and chains to my doors, reinforcing them. I didn't sleep. I couldn't, not after what I just saw. I covered all the windows in foil. I turned the house upside down, searching for the cameras. It's been 3 days, and I don't know what to do. In my panic, when I shut down my computer, I didn't save the link. I have no idea how to find that site again, or even how I got there in the first place. But I need to know. I need to know if there are any new photographs. I need to know if someone is still recording me. Somehow, doing things that I don't even remember. Don't get on the dark web. It's not worth it. You don't want to see what's on there. But if you do, if you find that site, please tell me. I need to see it just one more time. I'd first like to start off by saying I do not recommend going on the dark web unless you know what the hell you are doing. Or you might end up like me, 23, single, and looking over my shoulder every minute of the day. I was 20 at the time and spent my free time getting high on weed and playing video games. My drug dealer at the time had been busted with possession and drug distribution. So my friend, who also smoked and did some other drugs, introduced me to this thing called the dark web. He had downloaded Tor onto my computer and got me a VPN. He had shown me this site called Point, where people mainly sold drugs. So of course, like any other pothead, I managed to get a good supplier and would place a purchase every couple of weeks. After a couple months, I began doing some research on Google and Reddit about the dark web. I read some horror stories on Reddit, and there was something that just piqued my interest about it. So of course, my curiosity got the best of me. So I began exploring again. So of course, my curiosity got the best of me. So I began exploring. A lot of links were broken, but I managed to find quite a few websites that were quite interesting. But there was one that had piqued my interest the most. For safety reasons, I am not going to say the name of the website. But they sold all sorts of things. Drugs, counterfeit money, cheap gift cards, hitmen, and weapons. I've always been interested in weapons. So I began exploring the weapons catalog, and there were all sorts of stuff. Anything from 9mm to AK-47s to RPGs. So me, being the fool that I am, created a fake anonymous email account and registered as a new user on the website. And also bought some Bitcoin currency. Between me wanting to buy some weapons and wanting to see if the website was legit, I decided to make a few purchases. I bought a Walther P22 for $752, along with some ammo, an M16 for around $1,600, and a couple grenades for about $850. After about 4 days, I got my order, and I live out in the middle of nowhere, so I was able to shoot off the two guns without suspension, and they both worked great. But I went to go pull the pin on one of the grenades, and immediately after it pulled, it blew up just a few feet away from me and blew off my foot. I just threw it, and it bounced off a tree and rolled back by me and blew off my entire right foot. There were chunks of my foot all over the ground and blood splattered everywhere. I called an ambulance and got a ride to the nearest hospital. After being wrapped up and everything was all set, the police asked me what even happened. So me being the idiot I am, I told them that I had bought weapons off the dark web and a grenade I bought blew my foot off. Once I was able to leave the hospital, I tried tracing my steps back to the website I bought them from to show the police. But my computer had a webcam and those sneaky admins hacked into it and saw that I had police. And a message appeared in the bottom right corner of my computer. In a black chat box, the message said,
"You screwed with the wrong people. Prepare to pay."
Then the police took my computer and my guns. Then later that night, there was a black SUV that kept driving past my place. At about 10 p.m., my front door busted wide open, and a guy dressed in gray wearing a black hat had walked in with a gun and a duffel bag. I took one of my kitchen knives and snuck up behind him and slit his throat and watched him bleed out. To this day, I still feel guilty, but it was in my own self-defense. I opened up his duffel bag and looked through it. It contained mostly cleaning supplies and a couple of knives along with a battery-powered bar saw. I took his body and shoved it in the box of my truck and took his gun and knives and put them in the truck with me. I drove out in the middle of the forest and dumped his body. I then went back to my house and sprayed out the blood in the box of my truck with a water hose. I packed up a few outfits, some food, and some pictures, and ditched town. Well, more like state. I used to live in the East Coast, but now I'm spending my time in New Mexico. The only person I still have contact with is my older brother. We spend big holidays together, but that's about it. I've made it nearly 3 years, so I'd say I'm doing well for myself. I'm going to start off by telling you all to get to know your computer skills before you go on the dark web. It's not a toy. It was September 2017 when I was exploring it, using Tor and a VPN service, which I still use to this day. But let me tell you, depending on what you're going to go on the dark web looking for, you might only need Tor and a VPN, as where if you're looking for the deepest and sickest corners of the dark web, then you're going to want to learn some computer knowledge before doing so. It's for your own safety. Take it from me. Anyways, I was browsing it and managed to hack my way through a back door into a red room. When I entered, it was a chat box in the bottom right corner of my laptop with other users chatting about last week's event. They were saying things like, "God, last week had me so turned on," and "It was like one of my dreams," and stuff. Already at that point, I was like, what the hell is this? But I stayed, and one of the admins had privately messaged me and asked,
"Are you here for tonight's episode?"
And me being the idiot that I am, I said, yes, of course. The admin had replied back with,
"Oh, well, enjoy the show."
I then waited about 15 minutes. Then I heard a little boy whining and calling for his parents. He was whining and saying, "Mommy" and "Daddy," along with, "Where am I?" Then the little boy's face appeared on the screen with a tear dripping down his face. Someone in the chat said, "Screw his eyeball," and I was already afraid. And the next thing I knew, I heard a crush, and a massive scream let out. I then saw a screwdriver was in the poor boy's little eye, and someone said, "Ruin his arm." But by that point, I was already on the floor throwing up my guts. And next thing I knew, I had passed out and I woke up about 20 minutes later and found a text on my screen saying,
You made the wrong move.
The next day, I had a white car following me everywhere. It went on for the next 2 weeks, passing my home several times a day. They were taking notes of my every move, and I thought I was going to be dead for sure. It's been 1.5 years, and I haven't seen that car since. Thank God, but I'm still exploring the dark web because it's something I enjoy. I was a 25-year-old man, a hacker and a businessman / military dropout. It was in mid-December, but it wasn't very cold outside. Looking out the window, I could see the snow barely clung to the edges of the road. Outside his house, where the plows and trucks had it piled high from days earlier. Probably from the rain. There was always rain. I was in London after all. I had been recently trying to make a purchase of a 6-MAPB, also known as hydrochloride, which if you don't know is very frowned upon by our good queen, apparently. So, because of this, I had to use means that I wasn't quite as fond of. Means that required me to break out the anonymous router. I had sworn to be off of hacking. I only ever did it for good, of course. The usual things. Helping fix computers. Doing the coding work for corporations. That kind of a hacker. In fact, as I thought about it, the most I'd ever did publicly was act as a slightly more expensive version of the Geek Squad. But the potential for evil, considering how reliant the world was on its technology, was horrible and vast. I could kill even thousands of people reliant on computers at a hospital with the pressing of a button. I didn't feel comfortable enough with all that power in my hands, even if I would never do a thing to undermine common society. So I swore to never use my skills for anything more than a frozen screen again. I went through the process automatically from prior years of practice, going first on the deep web, and metaphorically swimming in the pools of predominantly forgotten data and blank coding, swimming around until I found what I wanted. It took a bit longer than I remembered, due to the constant growth of the vast ocean that is the internet. That really was the beauty of the thing, I suppose. Why it drew me to it. It's so limitless. After what seemed like thousands of millions of fathoms of metaphorical depth, I found what I was looking for. I did a quick double check in my mind to remember that I had indeed been using the proper router. I took a deep breath to calm my nerves and clicked. Immediately, the screen went dark. An image of a girl that looked to be from one of those Japanese horror films appeared on the screen. She appeared to have hanged herself. After only a matter of seconds, my computer was working hard, trying to fend off hundreds of attacks coming in at my computer and information. "Come on, you've got this," I whispered under my breath to my own programming. Then the cursors started appearing, others taking control of my computer. I had no way of knowing who they were and what they would do. My fingers moved like mad to try and stop the intruders and plug up the holes in my defenses. It seemed no matter how many holes I would plug, more just kept coming, forcing their way in. The screen changed entirely. I was watching a live stream of some sort. It hadn't started yet. There was no way to tell in my struggle if it had been me or one of the many others invading my computer, whose clicks caused me to join it. In the end, it didn't matter. I was here now. I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't leave. Someone coming and leaving without saying a word would draw attention to me from the eyes I did not want. I couldn't say anything either, for the same reason. So I just sat there at my screen and watched. I read the chat room in my head. Start the show. I can't wait. I wonder what it's going to be about. I know, me neither. Hey, why aren't you talking? Yeah, say something. A flash of panic touched my soul. They saw me. And then the hacker side of me took over. I replied, I'm just here waiting to watch the show. An image came up on the screen saying it was starting.
Yes, start it. Start the show. Start the show. Start the show.
The live stream started, and the chat room exploded. When the screen changed from black, I began to ignore the chat and everyone around me. On the screen in front of me was an image of a boy. He seemed to be about the age of 11 or 12. He had just come home from school, seemingly, set down his backpack up against his bed, and sat down at the computer to work, or play games, or watch YouTube probably. The film was being captured through his desktop webcam. It was obvious that he had no idea he was being filmed, or was aware that any of this was happening. There must have been no small light that indicated that the camera was on. No pop-up to show his own face. Just him, on this live stream and now. In the deafening silence of the minutes that followed on his end, the boy just sat there, in front of his computer, not the slightest bit concerned of knowing of this. The chat kept exploding, waiting for something in particular to happen, but I didn't know what. And then it happened. During the silence, in fact adding to it and heightening the sensation, I began to see the boy's closet door in the background begin to move. The handle began to shuffle, ever moving the door further open. I could see fingers wrap around the closet door side, and the shape of a man appeared. A figure came out of the closet, and he was holding a toolbox. He crept across the room towards the boy. The overhead fan was on in the boy's room, so he didn't make a sound. When he passed the bed, he put his toolbox on it. He was holding a piece of duct tape. He arrived right behind the boy, and he moved his hands around the boy's head, grabbed him and placed the duct tape over his mouth so he couldn't squeal. "Oh God, please, no," I said. The boy passed out in the male figure's arms. The person then dragged him around the room. He pulled out a length of rope from his toolbox and wrapped the noose around the boy's supple, still warm neck. The figure left him to hang there, dangling from his own fan, his own room. He calmly walked out of the room and into what would be the boy's house. The figure closed the door behind him. What did I just watch? A murder was just committed and I was just forced to watch. I got a text on my phone, slowly, painfully dragging my eyes down, away from the now cold body on my computer. I looked at the text. It was a picture. It was a live image of me. A view of me right now from my desktop. There was another text that said,
"We're coming for you."
I must share this burden with someone. I need sleep. But whenever I close my eyes, I see it. My life is now a waking nightmare because of that terrible video. I found it online, on the dark web. You know what I'm talking about. The place where drug dealers and peds rub elbows with armed merchants. The place where terrorists conspire and all sorts of ugly rumors roam. I thought it would be a good idea to visit this place. My purpose? Call it morbid curiosity. I was looking for the most extreme content I could find. Snuff movies, red rooms, sex and death commingled. I considered myself a student of the human condition and am fascinated by man's darker urges, his apparent hatred of himself. I wanted to plumb the depths of his sickness and see what I could find. Knowledge for its own sake, or something. I come from a wealthy family and have never known to want. I knew I would have to pay for my curiosity, so I purchased a few $1,000s worth of crypto in advance. I'm not going to bore you with the technical details of accessing the dark web. If you have the desire, it only takes a little bit of research. Seek and you shall find. In my search, I scoured message boards, covering many distasteful topics, such as cannibalism and incest necrophilia. I chatted with several strange individuals, most of whom were distrustful of my direct approach. A few offered to make a trade, but wanted me to show them something first. I, however, had nothing to offer. I was burned more than a few times, but I anticipated as much. After more than 2 weeks of searching and being continuously ripped off, I finally came across something interesting. The promise of a genuine red room. After a days-long conversation with a friendly stranger on a rather disturbing message board, I was provided with a link to a live stream. He assured me it was genuine and unlike anything I'd ever seen. It cost me a mere $500, and I have no doubt what I saw was real. If you saw it, you would know too. The scene began abruptly with the camera displaying a large, windowless room with high ceilings. Mulch covered the floor. What appeared to be a giant rock took up one corner, and opposite, this was a kid's swimming pool filled with water. Jesus Christ, how could I have known what was about to take place? A portion of the ceiling suddenly opened, and a small girl upside down was lowered into the room. Nude, she writhed. She was suspended by her feet from what looked like giant forceps. Her hands were bound behind her back, and tape covered her mouth. She was only a teenager. Needless to say, She was visibly terrified. Nothing happened for a few seconds. Then, from under the rock, a head appeared. It was a snake. An anaconda, I believe. Slowly, so slowly, he emerged from his hide, forked tongue tasting the air. The girl's eyes bulged from her head with the most intense fear I have ever seen. The snake continued his creeping advance. He was massive. He had to be at least 50 feet long. I had never heard of a snake so big. He was an absolute monster if there ever was one. I later learned the snake was genetically modified, and it was even hinted there were other such creatures. His face rose within inches of hers, tongue darting in and out. He loomed above her, all coiled aggression. Mercifully, the girl fainted. Whatever was holding the forceps began to shake the girl, like someone dangling a toy in front of a cat. The snake's head pulled back slightly, tongue still flickering. He remained still for a moment, and then, without warning, he struck. His jaws clamped down on her throat, and his body whipped around her with lightning speed. He took her to the floor and proceeded to squeeze the life out from her as the giant forceps were lifted from the room and the ceiling panel replaced. I watched, stunned, as a snake then uncoiled and released his teeth from her throat. He unhinged his jaw and began to swallow her whole, a hideous lump working its way down the length of the snake's body. The entire process could not have taken more than 20 minutes. Afterwards, I sat in silence for what seemed hours, trying to process what I had just watched. My conscience gnawed at me to do something. That poor girl was in the springtime of her life, and others could be in danger of the same ghastly fate. This had to be reported. But I did nothing. This was all brought and paid for by me, as I'm just as guilty as the other people who made the film. I will not go to prison. I refuse to spend the rest of my life behind bars. I need to look out for my family. Hey everyone, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and hit that bell notification if you haven't. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and even donate to my Patreon if you're feeling generous. Thank you.